Hi everybody, Ben here at Glide. We are today filming video 3 out of 5 in our series looking at a complete example where we are configuring a new trigger-based workflow system. This one's based around the UK VAT filing requirement, but serves as a good example for any workflow really. Video 3, we're going to look at deadline dates and target dates. First of all, we're going to start with statutory deadlines. So a deadline in Glide means something generated out of statute or regulations applies equally to some of your clients. It is not an internal deadline you've imposed upon yourself or a target date. That's very much covered on the target dates. So let's get straight into how we might go about adding one of those to our workflow. So config menu, edit workflow systems, and I'm going to be back in the VAT V2 example that we've been working on already in the first 2 videos. Now, to add a new deadline, I need to come to the Elements tab. Remember, this is a single subsystem workflow. If you have a multiple subsystem, you might see multiple Elements tabs, and of course you'd want to go to the appropriate one. And I want to just find the deadline section right in the middle here, and I'm going to click New Deadline. So my name is what will appear on the job card, in our reports engine, in lots and lots of places. So you do want to give this a name that actually identifies it. You wouldn't want to call all of these filing deadline, because often they'll be listed in a widget or a report that pulls together all deadlines. So you want to have, in this case, the word VAT in there. Display order is simply the order they're displayed on the job card. I'm actually only going to have one, so it's totally irrelevant. You choose your deadline calculation. So in Glide, there's some generic options at the top here, which are occasionally helpful, but basically this is where the deadline options are held. So we tell the system how to calculate these deadlines. So all you do when you're configuring a workflow is choose the appropriate deadline. We should have everything in here. If you find a deadline that's missing, just get in touch with support via the blue widget in the bottom right corner and let us know. We have everything, a lot here obviously for the UK, that's where we're based. The GIB, there is some Gibraltar ones, Ireland, USA, various European ones focused on VAT. And those ones are all Canadian at the bottom there. So lots and lots of deadlines. If your country is missing, just let us know. So I'm going to choose VAT filing bracket 7th. And coming down further, I don't need to worry about these 2 settings for the purpose of this video. I have an opportunity to actually filter who this applies to. And for example, if I was adding charity deadline onto my general accounts workflow, I can filter it to only generate for charity clients, likewise with pensions and clubs. I've got a CT setting which is based upon the CT field rather than the client type. These 2 here are quite UK based ones. This is Limited PLC LLP Charity Company. We use that on our template for accounts workflow to ensure that deadlines are only calculated for incorporated clients. Avoid you needed to have 2 routes, one for incorporated, one for unincorporated. But for things like VAT, of course, the deadline applies to everyone that's on the workflow, so you just leave it as all clients. Completion on, this is where you tell the system when the deadline has been done. So you're going to choose either a stage or a job field. We don't have any job fields yet, so that's not going to appear in today's example. But I'm going to choose a stage, and of course it's going to be the stage filed. That is obviously when this is done. And we'll have a look at an example of the impact that has on the job card. So click Create. That creates my deadline. That will also have added the deadline to all of my routes. So if we just scroll down to the detailed editor, we'll see the deadline there. If there was a route version that you didn't want to have the deadline, you could just go in and delete it. Okay, so let's go back to my client that I was looking at earlier. I think it was called, there it is, Cairngorm. And let's create this August job here. Okay, you're going to go onto the job card and there is our deadline. So the deadline knows how to calculate itself, if that makes sense. So in this case, it knows that it needs to take the quarter end and go to the 7th of, not the next month, but the one after. Really important in Glide, no one can mess around with these deadlines. You can't say, do you know what, I want that to be the 1st or the 3rd. We're really deliberately unflexible on that, and that's because we think it's important to have deadlines as one concept. Everyone knows where they stand, they know how they're calculated, you can rely upon them. These jobs are of course automatically generated, not on my demo video here because I needed it to pop up at that exact moment, but when you're running this in your practice, jobs will generate automatically, this deadline will generate automatically, and that's the sort of thing that's critical for you to really gain trust in the system. We don't want to give users the option to mess around with these. It's asking for trouble. That all comes in with target dates, which we'll come on to in a moment. So our deadline's there. Let's also have a look. I think we've still got our dashboard. So let's see where else we're going to see this deadline. So every workflow system that has a statutory deadline or multiple statutory deadlines will have a deadline monitor widget. So you can see those listed in the widget list. So this one's right down at the bottom here, VAT V2 deadline monitor. It's going to list all of your deadlines. That's why I mentioned it's nice to give it a good name. And it's going to show you them categorized into 60 or more days. That's any deadline that's 60 or more days. So again, thinking of year-end accounts in the UK, if you're creating your job 1 month pre-year end, the second that job creates, your deadline is going to be in that end column, even though it's got 10 months to go. With VAT here, because it's a bit of a quicker turnaround, it's dropping straight into the 30 to 60 days. So again, it's nice to know jobs create automatically, deadlines create automatically. So if you have this widget set to overall, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to see that straight away up until the deadline's completed. If you have this set to linked, then of course you'd need to be in a job position on that job, which again, that can be automated if you're the partner, director, manager, VAT manager, whatever. That can all be set up to happen automatically. So you'll keep a good overview of all your VAT jobs in this case. Okay, where else do we see deadlines? Well, the traffic lights, they will show deadlines. Traffic lights are looking at a linked view. So again, as we said a moment ago, it's looking at your jobs you are interested in. Yellow one means within 60 days we've got an approaching deadline that hasn't been done. Orange is 14 days, red's overdue. In addition, if you were to drill into the jobs reports, we would see the deadline on here. There's our deadline, there's our job, and we would have a filter. So we can filter this by the deadline date. We can also filter by whether it's ticked or not, whether it's been done. And finally, the jobs reporting engine, you will find in here you can both output your deadlines, they're in there somewhere, and you can also filter by your deadlines. Right, let's jump into this job and demonstrate how we complete a job. So I'm going to progress through. These are obviously the stages that we added on video 1. And we're going to at some point get to that stage that I highlighted as being the completion on stage. It was the filed one. It's actually the last stage. So here we go. So when I click filed, we'll get a green tick. There we go, got the green tick. So when a deadline gets the green tick, then it is going to drop out of the traffic lights, it's going to drop out of the deadline monitor. You can see we're down to zeros here. Do bear in mind that doesn't have to coincide with job completion. Deadlines can be completed as you pass through any stage or when any job field is completed. So those are statutory deadlines. Now let's move on and talk about target dates. In my opinion, the far more important concept in Glide is target dates. And the reason for that is that, again, thinking of, for example, the year-end work, maybe you're creating a job year-end minus 2 months. The ultimate deadline is year-end plus 9 months. That's an 11-month window. Now, if I'm an organized client wanting my work done maybe within 1 or 2 months of the year-end, that deadline date is totally irrelevant. You want another way of keeping on top of the fact that my work's come in, is ready, and to enable you to turn that around promptly. So target dates are all about helping you achieve the service that you want to give your clients. So first of all, I want to go to a job card. Okay, let's jump back into Kangol. I'm just going to create, we finished that job, so let's go ahead and create the November one. So your first option with target dates is simply to create them manually. You know, I don't really recommend it because obviously you have to do that. Much better for it to be automated. But worth bearing in mind that you can add in target dates manually. That could be useful where it is impossible to automate the process. So for example, one of your stages might be that it's maybe a meeting has been arranged and you want the target date for the next stage to be the date of the meeting. You know, of course, if you're phoning a client and arranging that, there's no real way of automating that. You're going to have to come and put it in. What I would say for that is that if you are expecting users to complete a target date manually, do consider using the traffic light, the workflow action traffic light called target date set. Basically allows you to block the job until such a time as a target date has been set. And really it's essential, because if you say to everyone, look, I want a target date entering in here at this point in time, that, you know, it'd be remarkable if everyone did that all the time. You know, it just won't happen. You'll end up with an incomplete data. So put in a traffic light. Let's really quickly look at how you do that. You'd go into your VAT V2 in this case, and of course this is route specific. You'd come down, and if you wanted the target date to be entered before the job's click started, you'd have new action, traffic light, target set, and then you would choose which stage you wanted to ensure there was a target on. Okay, of course, far better to automate target dates. So let's go ahead and do some examples. I'm actually going to just delete this job because I'm going to generate some targets on job creation. So I'm going to say that just want to have some relevant dates rather than 2020 because I want my target dates to be sensible. So let's say we're doing the August 19. We won't create that just yet. Okay, so into the edit workflow systems, into VAT V2, and this is all about routes. Everything here is happening on the routes tab. So important point to make, if you've got multiple routes, and I think video 4 is going to look at this, so I won't spend too long talking about it. If you've got multiple routes, you can differentiate all of this on a route by route basis. So to add in automated target dates, you do that by scrolling down to the detailed editor and find where it says workflow steps. And this is where you can start to generate automatic targets. This step at the top, called special on creation, this is the step that is run when a job creates. So I'm actually going to add my first 2 examples of generating a target right onto here. Now you click on create new action, and there's 2 workflow actions you might consider here: set target date calendar days, set target date working days. Pretty obvious what the difference is. I'm going to go for calendar days. So I'm just going to select my VAT V2 there. Now this is the number of days, so I'm going to put in 10, but 10 days after what? Well, you choose that in the next drop down. And currently I have options of my deadline, the job date, which in this case relates to the VAT quarter end, or execution date. Execution date simply means when it's calculated, it will look at the current date. So if it did it today, it's the 6th of September, it would be the 6th of September. Now, generally speaking, on a recurring workflow system, I would advise you don't use execution date on the job creation step. The reason for that is that although you might know that you have your job set to create on VAT quarter end minus 2 days, so you could then think to yourself, right, if I want it to be 3 days after the quarter end, that would be plus 5. Don't do that on a recurring one because someone might create the job early. they might go ahead and click create job 10 days before the VAT quarter end, and that would throw your calculations. So if you are creating a target date on job creation, sorry, if you are calculating a target date on job creation, use the other settings, job date, that's going to work fine, deadline, that would work fine. You will see more options in here, so obviously if you had more deadlines, you'd have more deadline related options. And in addition, you can have client-specific target date calculation. And to see those options, you would need to have a client field of the data type number. So let's go ahead and do one based on job date. So this is going to calculate on job creation. It's going to say take the job date, add 10 days, and the final drop down is where do we want that target to go? Well, I'm going to say we should have requested the info by then. So let's save that one. And I'm going to put another target date on job creation. This time I'm going to do deadline. If I'm honest, the deadline one, I always think to myself, let's just avoid focusing on the deadline. This is all about target dates, turnaround time, so it should be when should our team do things, and when a client has done something, for example, submitted info, approved something, let's respond within a set period of time. I don't think there's too many use cases where you say, right, let's do this on the deadline minus 10 days, but you can. It might be used where you've got a stage that you're happy, it's with the client, they'll get something back whenever they want. Maybe it's the year-end work, so we're not worried about this 37-day turnaround period that you get for that. And maybe you say, right, the target is we'll chase up with them if they haven't got back to us on deadline minus 60 days or something like that. This one I'm going to put on the filing. So let's save that and let's go back to Cairngorm. And we're going to find what we're going to do. We're going to recreate this job. Okay, so we should have two target dates. There we go. So the first one here, info requested, is our job date, our VAT quarter end of 31st of August 19 plus 10 days. Oops. And our filing one is the deadline minus whatever I just set up. I've forgotten already. Was it 10 days? So those are the two deadlines there. Now, before we go ahead and generate some more, I just want to mention a few things about reporting, etc. First thing I want to mention is that you can still manually change these target dates, and you can delete them. So if you want to make that impossible, just come into the workflow editor, and actually on the Elements tab, where you've got job stages, one of the settings that we probably glossed over in video 1 is target settings, and we can say visible but not editable. That means people just can't change these automated targets. You've also got a setting with widget that just opens up some extra target related widgets for you, so worth having a play around with that. So let's hit save and let's go back to Cairngorm. There it is. And we'll just see now that that particular stage's target date just cannot be messed around with. Okay, so reporting wise, let's go to our dashboard. So that's the 10th, by the way, we're sat here on the 6th of September. I don't know if you can see that on the screen grab. That target date's the 10th of September. So what I want to show you here is this widget, upcoming targets. I'm currently set to linked. As with all of them, you can filter that however you like. I really like this widget. What it does is it's showing for all of my jobs, subject to filtering of course, but for all jobs in the system, it is actually looking and picking out, let's open this job card in a new tab. So we've got two target dates here that are kind of in play, as I would call it. They've not yet been done. A target would be considered done when the current stage of the job is beyond the stage of the target. So currently we're on to request info, we're on this stage. So this target is still very much in play. As soon as we're on to the next stage, it's not. But what does the widget do? What does the upcoming targets do? It looks at all stages that are still in play, so in this case just literally all of them. It picks up all the target dates and it actually reports to you on the earliest date. The reason we do that is, say if you decided you wanted to generate a target on every stage, it would be really annoying if reports and widgets just listed the same job 7 or 8 times. There's really only one thing you can do next, so we focus on the the one stage. We take the target date and we deduct it from the current date to show you how many days to go. So this has got 4 days to go, of course. And that next target date is basically, this is a demo system with literally just one job in it. But if I had 1,000 jobs, 200 year-end accounts, 200 VAT returns, a load of management accounts going on across a large portfolio, multiple members of staff, this is actually going to prioritize them all for me. For me as the portfolio manager, I'm going to see what should be happening next. For my team, whether they're set to linked or held, whatever, they're going to see what they should be doing next. It's just a great way to keep everyone on track and focused on turnaround times and client service. Still look at the progress monitor. That's still useful. Still look at the deadline monitor. They're not irrelevant, but this actually, I think, conveys the most useful information. Where else do you see it? We see it on the jobs report. If you've got this column set to appear, you don't have to have it. You see their next target. So we've got 10th of September. It actually shows you the stage. You can get it to not include that stage, which is handy for people that like to export this to Excel. In terms of other reports, you can, say for example, on the jobs report writer down here, you can actually report upon and filter by all of your stage target dates. So you're not kind of just purely focused on the next target date, as we call it. Right, okay, let's progress our job. This will be interesting. We've got 2 target dates on this job, so let's actually progress beyond this stage. So now we're on the next stage here, awaiting info. And what we see if we refresh our dashboard is that it will now know that this is done, and so 27th of September will become our next target date. So let's hit refresh, and yeah, there we go. So we've now got plus 21, which is nice. So what other ways do we have of calculating target dates? Well, the next one I want to show you is the execution date. And this one is highly recommended where you are generating this on a step that is actually a button that a user will click. Okay, so what stage is our job on? Let's get back to our job card. We're on awaiting info. We've got 2 buttons, info received, info chased. So let's put a couple of examples on here. So I'm going to find my button. Here it is, info chased. Let's say if we're chasing info, that we would then want that to trigger. We haven't got a lot of time to do this VAT return. So let's say if we've chased info, we would want to chase info again in 3 days. 3 working days in this case. And this is where the execution date is great, because if you click the button, it will just say today plus 3 days. Okay, so we've saved that. So let's go back and let's do that. So if we click info chased, what that's done is that's set, even though we're still on that stage, that's absolutely fine. It's set a target date to 11th of September. So if we got to the 11th and clicked it again, it would set it for the 14th or whatever, subject to working days. If I click it again now, we're still very much on 6th September, so it's just going to reset it still for the 11th. So let's go and have a look at this date's earlier than 27th, so if we just glance back at our widget here, we now know we've only got 5 days. I'm doing 3 working days, so of course that's jumping over a weekend there. Okay, let's have another example when the info is actually received. Let's say set target date working days, and we're going to say, right, we should send this to the client. Let's be a bit more generous, within 5 working days. So I'm going to hit save, come back to my job card, and when I hit info received, we've got 5 working days there to do that. So this kind of execution date is great for having it on when you click a button. Works really well. Okay, final thing I'll leave you with on this video is that if you want to be using this widget, and I do recommend you do, well, then I would recommend you ensure workflows are configured such that there is always one or more, but at least one target date on a stage that hasn't yet been completed. So for example, when the job creates, generate at least one target date. And you could generate that just for the end. It could just be a turnaround target. It could be, right, management account quarter end plus 20 days. That's our turnaround target. And because that's on our last stage, you don't have to worry about any others. The job will always be in that widget. But more realistically, and maybe thinking of year-end work, job creation, set a target maybe for the first stage. Maybe it's a pre-year-end phone call, pre-year-end tax planning. And then as soon as you're clicking a button that moves you beyond that stage, that's dropping out. So make sure you trigger a new one, or maybe several new ones. Maybe then you have the turnaround one for the end. So just don't have a situation where you click a button and you go on to the next stage and there's no targets. You can have that situation, but don't have it if your expectation is that all jobs will always appear on this dashboard widget. That's not going to work for you. So I thoroughly recommend ensure there's always one target date on an active stage. Final thing I want to mention here is, we're talking a lot about turnaround time. We do have the turnaround report, which doesn't rely upon target dates at all. So if you're thinking of, target dates are great for managing the here and now, prioritizing active jobs. If you want to look back and say, right, on average, how long do we take to get from books in to accounts out? You actually don't need target dates. You can do that. The system can compare for you to actual dates, and it can show you averages by partner, by manager, by preparer, whatever. So target dates are great for helping people make the right decision to work on the right piece of work. So yeah, I think that's the end of this video. If you need any help whatsoever with the configuration options we're discussing in this video series, or with anything else, please do click on the blue icon bottom right corner here. You'll see our knowledge base, and if you click on the ask button here, you can contact the Glide team. You can also contact us directly at the office on the phone, and the full knowledge base is available via this top section here, Help Center. Okay, we'll be back next week with video 4, which is looking at the kind of automation of email and SMS messages. So look forward to recording that one.